that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 433rd edition of Energy Week with the amazing Tom Fennell.
In the flesh?
In the flesh, and with me also. Okay, as everybody knows who watches this show regularly, and I'm sorry that it bores you if you get bored by it, I go to the internet every day and find all the news about energy and climate change that I can, which, by the way, means that I might look at 400 headlines in the course of a day, you know.
I know you do a lot. Well, you do a blog.
I do a blog.
And this is the best of the blog.
Yeah, and I post my findings at geoharvey.com, my blog, GeoHarvey. And then once a week, Tom and I talk about the stories that we think are best, usually 3 picked for each day. So it's usually...
Well, it's almost always 3
Well,
days.
sometimes I'll do 4 one day and 2 the next, you know. It comes close.
21, we basically do an
21.
average of 3 a day.
Yeah. And the source materials that we use are available at the blog. We will try to keep you apprised of the date that we're talking about, but also the same materials are available if you look down below down there, just down there on the screen. Just scroll down a little bit and you'll find the text file, which is text and photographs for this, and also the blog that Tom and I use for putting it together so Tom can do his notes and so forth.
Well, some of these are very in-depth and well worth looking at.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll try to call that to your attention because, as I say, some of them are almost mandatory.
Absolutely. If you're interested in climate change and energy, almost mandatory. Yeah. So we'll start on Thursday, August 19th, and we're starting with an item from Clean Technica. Let me put the photograph up.
Yeah,
it's a photograph of the Capitol building, which has been abused of late. And there it is. What do you have for a title?
8 zero-emission transport items that, quote, need, unquote, to be in the next reconciliation bill.
Yeah. There were several provisions in the infrastructure bill that we being, I think it's who is this? The National...
I'm not sure. It's
the writers
somebody
of
in
this
the government.
Yeah, well, it wasn't in the government. This is a nonprofit. It might have been the Natural Resources Defense Council. We worked hard to make sure we're included and we're as good as possible, but almost none of them go as far as we would have liked for the climate needs. And here in this article are 8 of them.
Well, I just found out what we call it. It's the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act.
Yes, that's the act.
And we finally seem to be doing something that will address transportation emissions, but it doesn't go far enough. And they mention a list of 8 of these emissions issues.
Yes.
But I only count 7.
Well, they said that there were 8 issues, and then they said almost none of them goes far enough. Maybe one of them did go far enough. They didn't talk about it.
Well, we'll move on to the next one. Here we got a little picture of a funny-looking car here.
Okay, this particular car is a Wuling Hongguang Mini EV, believe it or not.
It doesn't look like a very big car, but you know, when you talk about reality, for most people, most of the time, this is all you need.
Yeah, and you know what? The first time I saw a picture of a Hummer, I thought it was small.
A Hummer?
A Hummer. They don't always come out being what you think they are from the photographs. I would guess this is small.
What's a nice little, it's a nice little car that Mercedes puts out? It's a little car.
It's called a Smart.
The smart car. Yeah,
That's
it's a
right.
smart car, right?
Smart 4.2, and you can get those all electric.
Can you now?
Yeah, and I think they're under $20,000.
Well, when you figure that so many families have two cars now anyhow, you need one big car to carry everybody, but one car for a little commute to the grocery store or to and from work or something.
When I was a kid, we had a 1959 Pontiac station wagon, and we had my father at one time had something like a 1949 Chevy Coupe, and then the Chevy Coupe got replaced by a VW Bug. But that was a thing that was very common. The VW Bug was not the first car, it was the second car.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, very often. Very often. So what do you have for a title for this?
Plug-in vehicles score 15% market share in China in July.
Yeah, this is from Clean Technica. Plug-in vehicles continue to see record or near record levels in China, having scored 231,000 registrations in July. That's a lot of registrations.
That's a lot of registrations.
That pulls the year-to-date tally to 1.3 million units, which is already more than this market had in the whole year of 2020. And remember, we're still in July, so they're probably going to double that for the year or more.
Well, the biggest news item was the absence of Tesla models
In
this article.
In the article, yes.
In this analysis.
Yeah.
So long article, interesting analysis, and there's a list of July's top-selling plug-in vehicles in more detail, and they're all Chinese brands.
Yes.
And not only that, they're almost all startups.
You know, it's
The
just
Chinese
typical.
are starting factories right and left.
Right and left. Now, we should bear in mind, though, when we mention that the Chinese are these cars are all startups. BYD,
Yeah, build your dreams.
is a Chinese company.
Well, they're not startups.
They're not a startup, but they are big.
Oh, yes.
And by the way,
They're bigger than General Motors, I think.
yeah, Berkshire Hathaway owns a quarter of it.
Do they really?
Yeah.
I'll be darned. Of the 7 models in the top 20 belonging to Chinese EV startups, 6 of them had record months. Okay, BYD also posted a strong showing. And this is interesting. In 2022, they expect to launch a full-size SUV.
Why not?
Okay, it's electric.
Yeah.
Coming in 2 versions. One is a family-friendly 7-seater body and an SUV coupe. Somehow I can't figure out what an SUV coupe is.
It sounds like a van.
Well, let's move along here. We
Okay.
got a lot to go.
Our
Got some other
picture,
ones here.
next picture, this is a picture of iron.
Is that iron?
Yeah, that's iron. And
Looks like steel to me.
It looks like steel. Well, there's no rust on it, so it's hard to tell. But this is iron that is part of the steel making process, and they're making steel with no carbon.
Yeah, this is interesting because I always thought of steel as a
Carbon alloy.
carbon alloy.
Yeah.
But they're finding out that hydrogen works just as well. And there apparently are other things that they can put in there.
Well, I can tell you something, Tom. Hydrogen is cheap compared to digging things out of the ground.
Well, that's part of what this argument says. Yeah. Green Steel, Swedish company ships the first batch made without using coal. That's a step in the right direction.
It sure is. This is from The Guardian. The Swedish venture Hybrit said it is delivering steel to truck maker Volvo AB as a trial run before full commercial production in 2026. Volvo said it will start production in 2021 of prototype vehicles and components made from the green steel. It's called green because the coal isn't used anywhere in the process.
Well, the whole process has to be green if you're going to call it green.
Well, yes.
But that's a good start, moving in the right direction.
Yep.
Well, Hybrid aims to replace coking coal, traditionally needed for steel making, with renewable electricity and hydrogen. Why didn't I think of that?
Crazy.
Steel production using coal accounts for around 8% of global greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah.
So
this is a big deal.
This is a big deal.
This is a really big deal.
Well, this is going to be the world's first delivery of green steel, produced without using coal.
But I'll tell you something, the green steel isn't really green.
Not really green.
It's really kind of gray. But
grayish green.
it's gray.
Or is it greenish gray?
It isn't colored green, it's just politically green. Okay, we're up to Friday, August 20th.
And we got a picture
and we have a
here
picture here of a
MingYang
wind
turbine.
MingYang turbine. And
MingYang is, of course, a company.
in China, of
It's
course.
Chinese.
And this is an article from Renews.
MingYang unveils 16 megawatts offshore giant. Well, that's the biggest we've seen so far was 14, and I think they were stretching that one.
Yeah.
So this is a little bit bigger than that.
This is bigger than the GE14.
And there's a couple of things to hear about this. Well, you read that,
Okay.
and then I'll comment on
The
it.
Chinese turbine manufacturer MingYang has launched a 16 megawatt offshore machine with a 242 meter rotor.
I'll get to that.
Holy smokes.
I'll get to that.
The MySE 16-242, which means it's just
242 meters,
it's 242 meters and 16 megawatts. And
which is 800 feet, by the way.
yeah, is designed for high wind sites, including Typhoon class IECTC, and features 118 meter long blades.
And they're almost 400 feet.
These things are gigantic.
This big.
Yeah, if you cut that thing into slices that were 20 feet long, you could house entire families inside each slice.
Well, you could. Well, just for reference, a football field is 90 meters.
Yeah, and this thing is 118. MingYang said it will be tailored for a North Sea deployment, and that's really interesting to me because it means they're making them in China, but they're shipping them to
Shipments in
Europe.
the North Sea. Well, there's a lot of potential in the North Sea.
There is. There's also a lot of potential in Asia.
A single 16 megawatt turbine can generate enough electricity to power more than 20,000 households. So this is putting out the juice.
One of these turbines would be enough to basically to power Windham County.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It produces 45% more energy than their previous model.
Yeah. Well, you know, the whole deal with wind turbines is how big is the windswept area.
Yeah, they're getting bigger and bigger, and
They are
that
indeed.
makes sense.
They are indeed. 242 meters is a quarter of a kilometer,
It is.
which means that it's about a seventh of a mile.
Yeah.
7 of these things, one after another, with their blade tips just touching, would be a mile long. Okay, should we go on? Or do
Yeah,
you
we
have
got
more?
an interesting picture coming up here.
We have an interesting picture and a somewhat scary story from CNN.
I'm going to have to tell them what the picture is because that doesn't look like anything that I know.
Well,
It's ice formed from rain on snow.
yeah,
In Greenland, by the way.
in Greenland.
Rain fell at the summit station in Greenland for the first time on record. And by the way, the summit station is on a mountain
Yeah,
in Greenland.
it's called the Summit Station.
Called the
because
Summit Station
it's
'cause
the
it's on a
highest-
summit.
It's the highest point in Greenland.
Yes, it is.
For
The only high point in Greenland.
Well, for the first time on record, precipitation at the National Science Foundation Summit Station was rain and not snow. Summit Station is at Greenland's highest point. It has been staffed since 1989 and has been under observation by satellite since the 1970s.
I forgot to look at how high that was, the highest.
It's just a little over 10,000 feet.
10,000. Okay,
Which
good.
is pretty high. And it's like a long ways from any open body of water. So
Right in the middle, well,
it's right in the middle of Greenland.
nowhere, really.
Yeah, it's in the middle of nowhere. And one of the things that's interesting about this is that the National Science Foundation drilled through the ice down to bedrock. And they had core samples going down to bedrock. So if there had been rain in the previous geological history of that station, they, I would think, should know it.
And there's left some traces, yeah.
no record of it.
No record, huh?
So I think when they say that it's the first time on record, I think what they mean is since the 1970s, but in fact, my guess is the National Science Foundation would probably be able to verify that this has not happened in the last several thousand years.
Well, reading from the article, temperatures rose above freezing, fueling an extreme rain event that dumped an unprecedented 1,750 billion gallons of water. That sounds like a lot.
I think it would mean a
It's the
flood.
whole, it means, I'm sure, on all of Greenland.
I would bet that if that were dumped on Brattleboro, it would flood the whole town.
I think they'd be talking about Brattleboro, Connecticut.
It would be washed down the Connecticut River, yeah. But this is disturbing because, you know, it's just one more piece of evidence saying the climate actually is changing, guys.
This isn't good.
This is not good. And, you know, anyway, do you have more about that?
No, I think it's time to look at a funny-looking boat.
That is a trimaran, which is a...
It certainly is. It's got 3 hulls.
It's also one of the most bizarre things I've ever read about. And let's just talk about it first.
Probably a pretty neat boat.
It probably is, except there's nobody
It's
on
called
it.
a power arc.
It has no crew.
Yes, it's automated. Right,
It's fully automated. This
Well,
is,
as I'm about to say, automated energy transfer vessel would expand wind farms opportunities. Now, this blows my mind.
It blows my
What
mind.
is a transfer vessel?
well, this is from the Maritime Executive. PowerX, a Japanese startup company, is developing a unique vessel, the Power Arc 100. It is a trimaran designed for transferring renewable energy in Japan's coastal water. It would carry electricity from wind turbines to shore in a massive battery array.
That blows my mind. Instead of using cables, they're loading this thing up, driving it to where they need it, and unloading it.
Yeah, but you know, if you think about it, Tom, that means that this guy has got to park at the wind turbine and be charged there. And then when it goes ashore, there's going to be another one coming in behind it, which means you're probably going to have a couple of these for every turbine. Or, on the other hand, you could have a huge battery at each turbine, and it could go from one turbine to the next, charging from those batteries. I'm not sure this is really such a good idea.
Well, in the article, it says it's cheaper than cables.
Okay. Yeah, I read that.
The vessel will greatly expand the potential for locating offshore wind farms.
I'll tell you what it will do.
What?
You could put a wind farm in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and have these vessels or vessels like them power power transatlantic ships.
You could. You
Yeah.
certainly could. You certainly aren't going to run a cable from the middle of the Atlantic Ocean.
No. Well, probably not going to run a cable. Who
Not a
knows
power
what
cable.
Who knows what they're
Not
going
a
to do
power
in
cable. It
the
just
future?
wouldn't work.
Are we done with that?
Well, the vessel will greatly expand the potential for locating offshore wind farms.
Yes, indeed it will.
Okay, undersea cables require expensive construction and remain vulnerable to the environment and natural disasters.
Yes.
This power transfer vessel will be more cost effective and minimize the impact on the environment.
Yeah.
They're also building a large-scale battery facility to produce fast-charging grid EV and marine batteries. And we'll probably touch base on something like that coming up.
I think so, yeah. Okay, our next item has a picture of wind turbines in
Is
Texas.
that what they are?
I think they are. I
Look
think
like wind turbines to me.
Yeah, and that looks like
All
Texas.
stretched out in a row.
All in a row. Okay, this is
And
from
it says
Solar
wind turbines
Industry.
in Texas.
Yep.
Duh.
This is from Solar Industry.
States take the lead on renewables in 2021.
Yeah, while federal leaders continue deliberations on how to build a cleaner, healthier future, states are making strides to advance renewable energy, according to a new roundup of state legislature highlights from Environment America's report. The title is The United States of Clean Energy Summer 2021.
And what it's doing is summarizing the clean energy progress made across the country.
Right, and whether it's really pushed by the state government or the federal government. And you know, the same thing's happening in Australia. The states are leading on renewable energy in Australia, and
Well,
the
they
federal
got a
government
problem there where the government's dragging their feet.
is dragging their feet.
Well, it didn't mean to be.
It's dragging everybody down. Is
Yeah,
what,
they are.
What it's doing.
Well, coal has been a big export in Australia.
Well,
And you know, it's money, folks. you
it's
know?
money until everybody goes broke.
Yeah.
And, you know, this is,
Well, the states know what's going on, but they're fighting the federal government.
they're fighting the federal government. And, you know, that huge operation that Western Australia approved,
Yeah.
which was like, I don't know, it was 8 gigawatts or something, that was killed by the federal government,
Yeah, it was.
at least temporarily killed. So,
Well, that's a great big undeveloped part of Australia. So it's part of a development plan, and they're going to want to do it.
well, there's that second one that we were talking about in the southern part of Western Australia.
Yeah, that's different.
There's a lot of opposition to that too. The people want the desert to be left desert.
Oh,
Really, you know, I mean, okay.
Australia's got enough desert.
It's also
It's like
got-
90% desert.
Yeah, but you know, these are people who went out there because it's desert and they love the desert and they don't want to have solar panels all over the place. And it's kind of surprising that they would put that take on things, because the alternative is not to leave the desert as it is, because everything's changing.
Well, as I say, 90% of Australia is desert anyhow.
Yeah, but it's just going to get drier.
So if they want to protect desert, they can protect an awful lot of it and not impinge on anybody's
Yes,
rights.
well, that's true.
We
Okay,
got a nice picture here coming up.
by golly, it's wind turbines.
Looks like wind turbines
I
again.
think we've used that picture in the past. This is from Renews.
Offshore wind would help save California $1 billion.
$1 billion.
And this is California.
Just think of the party we could have for $1 billion. We could,
Oh.
we could invite the whole state.
Oh, we'd have to move someplace other than this room.
We could invite the state to a party that would last for days and hire people from New York to cater. Okay,
Offshore wind could help save California
$1
$1 billion.
billion.
That's what I just said.
Offshore wind electricity could bring employment gains, cost savings, carbon dioxide reductions, and improve the stability of California's electric grid, according to a study from USC's Schwarzenegger, although that's usually pronounced Schwarzenegger, Institute, named after Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, certainly.
And the study is titled California's Offshore Wind Electric Opportunity.
I'm just trying to think. Black man from
It means coal miner.
it could mean coal miner.
It does mean
could
coal.
Mean, well, it means other things.
Egger is digger. So this is
Coal digger.
Schwarzenegger
Okay,
means
black.
a person who digs black stuff.
Black stuff. Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
good. The study highlights the economic impacts available as the Golden State seeks to take advantage of its coastal location by farming this natural energy resource. And by the way, in California, they don't have a shallow continental shelf like we got in the East Coast.
Yeah,
These things have to be floating.
you get a few feet offshore and it's too deep.
Developing 10 gigawatts of wind, that's a lot of gigawatts
Yep.
of wind, would contribute approximately $1 billion toward total resource cost savings. It would create up to 65,000 jobs during construction and 4,500 for operation and maintenance for the entire lifetime of the facilities.
Right.
So this seems like it would be a pretty good investment.
It would be a good investment. Yeah, I would think. Although I'm not an investment advisor. Okay, our next one is from Yahoo. And that is not a wind farm.
Nope, that's a desert solar array.
Yeah. What do you have for a title for the article?
Vistra, which is a company, completes expansion of battery storage system at its flagship California facility. Well, that is not a picture of a storage system. It's a picture of a bunch of panels.
Solar panels.
But the picture of the storage system looks very much like that.
Okay, Vistra completed construction of Phase 2 at Moss Landing Energy Storage Facility. The system is now storing and releasing power for California's grid. The facility facility's capacity of 400 megawatts, 1,600 megawatt hours, makes it the largest of its kind.
In the world.
In the world. 1,600 megawatt hours is the amount that this can discharge from its batteries, and that's...
I think it's set up to do that within 4 hours.
Yeah, I was going to say that would be Vermont Yankee in its early configuration for about 3.5 hours.
Well, Vistra's enormous lithium-ion battery system is co-located on the site of the existing Moss Landing power plant. So
Right.
It's right there next to a coal-burning power plant.
Yep, and all of the grid connections that that plant had.
That plant produces an excess amount of renewable power. Oh, there's also solar panels at that site.
Yes.
Okay, so it produces an excess amount of renewable power during the day when the sun is up, but often struggles to meet demand as the sun goes down. So this battery system stores the excess daytime power.
Right.
And then reduces it to the grid when it's needed. Well, that makes a lot of sense.
Sure does. We are up to Sunday, August 22nd. We have an item from CNN.
And we've got a picture of a hurricane.
Yeah, I got this.
Which we just sort of missed here.
Yeah, that's not the same hurricane, but that's okay.
No, it's a different hurricane.
We'll make do with this hurricane.
Well, I was tracking that hurricane.
Oh, it was crazy. It was like a drunken sailor.
Yeah.
It was all over the place.
All over. And when it hit Massachusetts, it stopped. And it kind of drenched New York.
Didn't it make landfall in Rhode Island?
Well, it did, but I mean, Massachusetts is pretty close to Rhode Island.
Yeah, and then it kind of went along the Massachusetts-Connecticut border. And
It certainly did.
Afraid it was going to drench the Hudson River Valley.
Well, it drenched Boston instead.
But
it drenched New York City.
It drenched New York City, and then it turned north and came east and went over us, although...
It didn't do much to us at all.
It was just a heavy rainstorm for us.
We didn't get any wind.
They had 17 inches of water in Kentucky.
Well, that was a different event.
But it was the same day.
Same day.
Man.
And I was looking at that storm, on a weather map. Didn't look like much.
No.
But it sat there.
It sat there. Okay, what do you have for a title for this?
How the climate crisis is changing hurricanes.
They're changing. They're acting like drunken sailors. The proportion of high-intensity hurricanes has increased due to warmer global temperatures, according to the United Nations climate report released earlier this month. Scientists have also found that the storms are more likely to stall and lead to devastating rainfall, and they last longer after making rainfall. And of course,
that's what happened with this one.
This what happened with Hurricane Harvey.
Well, Henri made landfall early Sunday afternoon in Rhode Island, as you've just said, bringing wind gusts up to 70 miles an hour and storm surges up to 4 feet. Okay?
Man.
The system weakened as it moved north to Vermont. And Henri is the first to make landfall in New England for 30 years. So a larger percentage of storms are reaching the highest categories in recent decades.
Well, and
that's because of global warming.
We had a lot of rain and damage from Hurricane Irene,
I lost a car.
The storm that
I lost a car in Irene.
Developed into. That didn't make landfall in New England. That made landfall, I think, in New York. And
I'm not sure, but Flat Street got flooded.
Flat Street got flooded, and that bridge at the end of the Whetstone Brook, which has got a square area under it that is probably 20 feet to a side. That was full up with water going through. It's just unbelievable to see how much water was going through that. Flat Street flooded.
Yeah.
Okay, that's in a 100-year flood zone, but what can I say? Okay, should we go on?
Yeah, we got a picture of a stranded boat.
Yeah, that's a stranded boat, all right. I forget where that boat is. It's like, I don't know. It's in...
It's in the middle of a dry place.
It's in the middle
of a place where there shouldn't be any boats.
It's in the middle of a desert now. I think that's like the Sea of Azov or something like that.
Well, the Middle East is running out of water, and parts of it are becoming uninhabitable. And the Middle East needs water pretty bad.
It's always needed water. I knew a person who told me that when the British went to King Saud of Saudi Arabia and asked if they could search for petroleum, he told them that they would be allowed to, and privately hoped that they would not find oil, but would find water. The lakes in the Middle East are drying up, and there are concerns that they will disappear entirely. The region has witnessed persistent drought and temperatures so high they are barely fit for human life. And from this point, things are just going to get worse.
Well, it's interesting because there's not a lot of lakes in the Middle East.
No.
And they're all drying up.
They're all drying up. And you can see that from space, whatever you want to do. I think the Sea of Azov used to have a fishing fleet, it was
pretty big. It was a sea.
It was a sea. It was a big body of water, and it's not a sea anymore.
Now.
It's basically a mud puddle.
Add climate change to water management and overuse, and projections for the future of water are grim.
Yeah.
In many parts of the Middle East, water is simply running out, and they didn't have much to begin with.
Yep.
The consequences are dire. Areas could become uninhabitable. I don't think could is the operative word.
I think areas are becoming
or something. Yep.
Uninhabitable.
Tensions over how to share and manage water resources like rivers and lakes could worsen, and political violence could erupt. And that area is a place known for political violence.
Yeah. No. People in the Middle East? Are you kidding me?
The Middle East, yeah.
Are we...
Let's move on.
Okay. This picture is the 9 Mile Point nuclear plant.
Which is on the shore of Lake Ontario. In New York.
And this picture is obviously taken from a long ways away.
Long distance apart.
Well,
it's out into the lake.
But it's this particular picture, I think, the horizon on this, the infrastructure of the 9 Mile Point plant looks to me like it's beyond the horizon.
It does. It should be as high as that one. I'll call it a chimney, but it's not a chimney. It's a cooling tower.
Cooling tower.
They should be as high as that cooling tower, but they don't seem to be. So I think you're right.
Okay, and this is from H2 View.
It is.
H2 meaning hydrogen.
Exelon Generation receives U.S. Department of Energy grant to explore hydrogen production at the Oswego Nuclear Station.
Now, the Oswego...
So we're looking at the Oswego Nuclear Station.
Yeah, the Oswego Nuclear Station is actually, when they say Oswego, they're talking about a place.
Oswego, New York.
There's two nuclear plants there. One is 9 Mile Point, which is what they're talking about, and that's the picture. The other one, I think, is, I don't remember, is it Harris? I think it might be.
Well, Oswego is the closest town to where this is happening. It's not in Oswego.
That's right.
And this is the spot where Lake Ontario begins.
Yes.
Okay, so it's right at the start of Lake Ontario, coming from New York.
Let me read the synopsis here. Exelon will partner with Nell Hydrogen, Argonne National Laboratory, Idaho National Laboratory, and National Energy Laboratory.
Good partners.
Yeah, I would think so. Yeah, I think there's probably at least 2 or 3 smart people in all of this. To demonstrate integrated production, storage, and normal usage at the 9 Mile Point nuclear plant. And it is astonishing how much money is going into hydrogen right now.
Well, it's the coming thing. I mean, we're starting to talk about it more and more on this show. I mean, a year ago, we didn't mention it at all.
Yeah.
Well, Exelon aims to explore the potential benefits of on-site hydrogen production at its nuclear station.
Yeah.
So hydrogen is another way to store energy.
It is.
So they got surplus energy coming from the nuclear station, pumping it to hydrogen.
Well, the nuclear stations are doing something here which is really, really intriguing. They are looking for ways to use their electricity if they can't put it onto the grid.
That's exactly what they're doing.
Hydrogen is one of the ways that they can use it. Another thing that they're talking about doing is powering Bitcoin operations, which to my way of thinking is kind of like saying that they'll keep the lights on at the world's biggest poker game. But you know, it's I don't see a social benefit.
Well,
out of
bitcoins are manufactured or
Yeah.
mined by using
an algorithm.
an equation.
Yeah,
A crazy equation. It takes a machine
a lot of
a
time.
lot of time to do that
So
equation.
the Bitcoin is just proof that they've actually found the number they were looking for, and there's a limited number of these numbers. But
Yeah.
you know, they're talking. And what is it for? Well, it's good for a number of things, including
Speculation,
money laundering, hiding money, speculation, and money laundering. And I think those are the only things that it's good for. You're not going to, I don't know. Elon Musk accepts bitcoins. He
did and he didn't, and then he's doing it again.
Apparently he is. Okay, should we get out of that?
Well, nuclear reactors could be given a new lease of life by providing almost perfect conditions to produce green hydrogen on a massive scale.
I have reasons to believe that nuclear reactors are not going to have a new lease on life.
Well, that's what this article is saying. I think you're right.
I know.
Well, it's also speculative. It says could be.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
New technologies utilize byproducts of nuclear power to generate alternative fuel sources, such as hydrogen, but they don't mention what those new technologies are. So
Yeah.
I'm not sure what's going on there.
We have a
Let's
picture
move
here of
along.
an electric bus in Hamburg.
That's an interesting little. We've seen this bus before.
Have we? I don't remember it.
I think it was going into a college campus.
It might have been. I think this looks like one of those automated things.
Well, the one we looked at was automated,
Yeah.
and this thing looks like it's automated too.
Yeah.
Although, if I remember correctly, the automated bus had an operator just in case.
Just in case. Okay, this is from Clean Technica.
When electric buses make sense and when they just don't. Nice
Yeah.
5-minute video in this article.
Yes. Electric buses are definitely better than diesel or natural gas buses. But that's indisputable without seriously bending the facts, which, by the way, people do. The thing is, combustion buses aren't the only competition for electric buses, and in many situations, there are even cleaner options that we can choose.
It starts right off the bat by saying light rail is often better.
Exactly. If you were going to run a rail line from here in Brattleboro to, say, Montpelier or Burlington or something like that.
I got news for you. It's already been done.
Yeah, I know. But I'm talking about an
Yeah,
all-electric.
I know
All
you're
electric.
kidding.
It would be a whole lot better. Using the tracks that are already in place, it would be much more efficient use of energy than building electric buses and using them on
Oh,
the roads.
sure, absolutely.
So that's why this article appeared.
Well, the article's talking about one thing which I never even conceived of.
What's that?
A special place to run buses, special highway just for buses.
Yeah?
And of course, they say light rail is much better than that. It's got a lot of the same drawbacks and it's cheaper.
Yeah. Should we go on?
Well, a couple of quick things.
Okay.
You don't have tires which take up energy.
Yes.
Okay. It takes up a lot less energy because of the tires.
Yeah.
And batteries never need to be replaced. The batteries in the buses have to be replaced. And if there gets to be too many people on a route, the option is to add more buses. With light rail, just put another car on the train.
Right.
So it's taking a lot of reasons why light rail makes more sense.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, we are up to this article. That's clean. That is energy storage.
A picture of a big energy storage place.
That picture is taken inside a big battery.
Big battery. That's right.
This is
That's
from Clean
exactly what it
Technica.
is. Giant energy storage project hoovers up excess wind and solar. By the way, this is Moss Landing, California. It's near San Francisco.
Yeah. The huge Vista energy storage project at Moss Landing, California is to get bigger. Work on the first 2 phases is ahead of schedule. Ahead of schedule is typical of renewable energy stuff.
It is.
And
It is
Vistra is looking forward to another expansion that will bring the plant up to 1,500 megawatts.
That's a gigawatt and a half.
That, you know, I mean, they're
That's a
talking
lot.
about, it's already the biggest in the world, and it's 400. And they're going to make it 1,500.
Yep.
And 6,000 megawatt hours.
Well, the article says that California is riddled with oil and gas wells, many feeding fossil power plants.
Right.
In addition, it has plenty of both wind and solar. So it makes sense to store any surplus energy till it's needed on the grid.
Right.
And that's what they're doing here.
Yep. Okay, our next item is also from Clean Technica.
By the way, it's going to be the largest battery-type storage facility in the world.
I think it already is.
Well, it will be when it's finished.
Yeah, and it's less than a third of the size of its.
It's as long as 3 football fields.
Okay, we have a GAC Axion 5. I'm sorry, GAC Ion 5 6C. How in the world do you name this car? You go into a car dealership and say, I want a GAC Ion VC6C.
Better make sure you say VC6C.
I can't even say it when I'm reading it.
But you're not in China.
And well, you know, that's not Chinese, though. I don't know what it is. I think it's just a bunch of letters put together. What do you have for title?
GAC Aeon V6C promises an 8-minute charge time and a 1,000-kilometer range. That's 620 miles.
Yes. Chinese car maker GAC says next month it will be selling the Ion 6C battery electric SUV. We're at a point where the news is just a bunch of letters. It will charge the depleted battery to 80% capacity in a lightning 8 hours. The car is rated to have a 1,000 kilometer NEDC, which is the Chinese rating, and that standard is known to be overly optimistic. So that's 620 miles. They're saying, well, maybe it's going to be 500.
I was just going to say, it'll be a good solid 500.
But it's going to be a long ways. Let me put it that way. So if I wanted to drive
there's no
from
question
here
about it.
to visit my son in Wisconsin, I'd probably have to stop halfway in between to charge the car for 10 minutes. And what a horrible tragedy that is.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my gosh.
It's really hardly enough time to get a cup of coffee.
Yeah, and on top of everything else,
You can't get a roll with that coffee.
I would have to stop halfway there just to sleep. So it's like, why are people complaining?
Well, from the article, the answer to the charging controversy is educating the motoring public, not installing a level 2 charger on every light pole in America.
But that's what they're going to do.
That's what they're thinking about doing.
Yeah.
Well, I can see charging stations replacing filling stations.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, I mean, it's going to happen.
Absolutely. Okay.
Ultra-speedy charging may be largely irrelevant to most EV drivers.
Yes.
They charge at home.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, they take the car home,
Absolutely.
charge it overnight.
Absolutely. Okay, we're up to Tuesday, August 2nd, and we have a picture of Kentucky.
Kentucky.
I'm sorry, this is Tennessee.
That's Tennessee, yeah.
And, you know, Kentucky and Tennessee...
That's the flood that just happened, I think.
Kentucky and Tennessee are kind of like Vermont and New Hampshire. Vermont
In a way,
and New Hampshire
yeah.
are identical, except one of them is the
Yeah,
other
mirror
turned
image,
upside down.
things,
In
yeah.
every respect you can imagine.
Except they're horizontal in Vermont.
Yeah,
New Hampshire
Vermont and
vertical.
New Hampshire are identical, except one of the others turned upside down.
I've
And that's true.
I've got a map home where I turned New Hampshire upside down and placed it side by side with Vermont.
They look
It's almost exactly the same.
almost exactly the same. And
Vermont, by the way,
politically-
is a touch bigger.
Yeah,
very
politically
slightly
they
bigger.
are each the other upside down.
Well, politically, they're
Except
they're
for
the
one
opposite,
thing,
yeah.
and that is they're both libertarian.
Yeah,
People in
libertarian
Vermont
left and
don't-
libertarian
don't-
right.
People in Vermont don't think about being libertarian, they just do it. Okay, this is from CNN.
How climate change amplifies extreme weather like Tennessee's deadly floods and New York City's record rainfall. Both of
Record-breaking,
these just happened.
yeah, record-breaking rainfall amounts in New York and Tennessee exemplify the same scientific phenomenon. We've talked about this quite a lot on this show. Extreme rainfall events being supercharged by human-caused climate change. and the science is well known and easily explained. I got news for you, gang. If it's going to be hotter out, the air is going to hold more water.
Just what took the words right out of my mouth.
So if you're
Warmer
putting out
air can hold about 7% more water vapor per 1 degree Celsius.
So you put your laundry out on a warm day instead of a cold one, right? To
Yeah.
dry. You know, really, it's going to dry faster on a warm day than a cold one. Everybody knows that.
Well, more water vapor in the atmosphere means more moisture available to
Which
fall
means
as
that
rain.
if that warm air hits a cold front, you're going to have a lot of rain.
Bingo.
Exactly. Okay, we have to move on, I'm afraid.
Yeah, we got a nice picture here
We
of
have
a fire.
Of a fire, yes.
Raging wildfires in California forced 42,000 to evacuate and drove Reno residents indoors due to historic bad air.
This is from CNN.
And by the way, Reno is in western Nevada. It's along the California border.
Right.
It's right where Reno stops being a rectangle and starts being a triangle.
Okay.
I said Reno, Arizona.
Arizona, Nevada.
Nevada, right,
Yeah.
Reno, Nevada.
Yeah, it's where there's a bend in the
state line.
State line. It's not
It's
not a
right at
bend
that
that
state
makes it
line is
sound
where
like
Reno
it's
is.
gradual. There's an
Reno's almost
angle.
in California.
Yeah. Over 42,000 residents have been told to evacuate their homes as 9 large wildfires burn in Northern California. The Caldor fire has burned 114,166 acres since sparking 10 days ago, and it's only 9% contained. I got news
There's a
for
lot
you.
of pictures on this site. There's 54 of them.
I
a
got
lot of
news for you.
pictures.
These wildfires are going to be significantly larger than the
Well,
state of
they're
Vermont.
using up a lot of assets. The article says there's more than 2,000 firefighting personnel fighting the blaze.
Yeah, that's
20
the one.
helicopters, 200 fire engines, 50 hand crews, and 50 dozers. Okay? That's
It's crazy.
that's a big
This
operation.
is a lot of work those guys are doing.
So far this year, wildfires have burned more than 1.5 million acres.
Yep. Okay. We have an item now from Clean Technica. What a surprise.
Well, that's a natural gas plant.
It is.
How to make a small fortune.
It's an old joke. One way to make a small fortune is to start with a big one and invest it badly.
Well, that's what this article's all about.
It is indeed. Australia's largest generator and largest emitter, AGL, is finding itself in hot water.
That's, by the way, Australian Gaslight. That's
Well,
what
they
AGL
should-
stands for.
Yeah.
That's from a long time ago.
These are people who are gaslighting people. It recently announced a $2 billion loss in the 2021 to 2022 fiscal year that was caused by clinging to coal and delaying the switch to renewable energy.
Well, there's politics going on there, and there's also reluctance to have stranded assets.
Well, they're worried about stranded assets, but I got news for you. You're far better off getting rid of the stranded assets before they're worth nothing at all.
Well, as I said, it's a lot of that is political.
A lot is.
The share
Okay.
price dropped over 60%.
Well, that was impolite.
AGL was forced to write down billions of dollars worth of assets.
Well, you can bet that there are people who own AGL who are very upset about it.
Well, the shareholders are bracing themselves for further losses, so this isn't over yet.
Yes. Okay,
Moving right along.
we have an item from
nice picture here.
CNN and a picture of a Maersk Sealand container ship.
That's a pretty good-sized ship, isn't it?
It is, but I think container ships do get a lot bigger than that.
I think they do. I think the article says it's a small one.
Yeah.
Well, that is, as the sign says, a Maersk container ship. And they just ordered 8 carbon-neutral ships. Now it needs green fuel for them.
Yeah, I was fascinated by this. Shipping giant Maersk said it would spend $1.4 billion on 8 large ships that will be able to use green methanol as well as traditional fuel. There is not enough green methanol to power them, but Maersk hopes that the size of the order will jumpstart the market.
Well, green methanol is methanol made with green components.
such as green hydrogen.
Green hydrogen, exactly. And Maersk is the world's largest shipping line, and shipping is one of the dirtiest industries.
Yep.
So they're trying to clean up their act.
Well, the alternate that they have, you notice that this is, it's able to use green methanol as well as traditional fuel. The traditional fuel is bunker oil. It's awful.
It is the worst fuel I think you can get that's not coal.
Yeah, it's horrible stuff. And, you know, this is just one of those things
Well, it's the bottom of the tanks, literally.
Yeah. But what Maersk is hoping is that they're going to be able, because they're spending so much money on these ships, they're going to be able to have green methanol manufacturing and storage areas in the ports or near the ports where the ships are going to be fueled.
The article mentioned something like that.
Yeah. And there are...
There's not a lot of green methanol now.
Yeah.
But Maersk is planning on changing that.
Yes. And there are some interesting aspects to this, one of which is that in terms of volume, there's a lot more energy in a given volume of bunker oil than there is in the same volume of methanol. So they have had to build larger storage tanks into the ships to store fuel.
Oh.
So, you know,
That makes sense.
This is all stuff that has to be thought about and considered and engineered, and they're not doing this for free.
Well, they're looking at the future. They're not looking at the present.
Yes, they are, and they're also looking at the fact that the Earth has got to be protected. Okay, should we go on, Tom?
Yeah, we got an interesting picture of
This is a fascinating article. This is a farm. There it is. And this
doesn't look like a farm to me. Well, something's happening there.
Yeah, and it's green down at the bottom.
By the way, this is indoors. This is all happening indoors. Yeah. And those vertical things are 20 feet.
This is from Clean
10
Technica.
stories.
This is from Clean Technica. I've tried to say that 5 times. And
tech firm promises 1,500 times more cattle feed using 5% of the water. That's hard to believe.
But it's also important. One Utah, you know, this is happening in Utah where they have cattle, but they don't have a lot of water. One Utah tech firm is hoping we will be able to use science to find our way out of drought-fueled fuel shortages with a new spin on vertical farms that promises 1,500 times the food production
That's amazing.
Of a conventional farm in just with 5% of the fuel use. You know, I've mentioned this before. There's a company in New Hampshire called Leaf.
Called who?
Leaf, L-E with a bar over the E, F.
L-E-F, okay.
And they sell lettuce and things like that down at the co-op. And, you know, the people I've known who have eaten the lettuce kind of agree that it's really amazingly good tasting.
And how are they doing this?
They're doing it in New Hampshire in a greenhouse.
Indoors?
Indoors, in growing the lettuce hydroponically.
Okay.
And I interviewed them for Green Energy Times a couple of years ago and was amazed to discover that one greenhouse, which covers 1 acre, produces 1 million pounds of produce a year.
I can't even relate to that.
It's
1 million pounds of produce would fill this room, wouldn't it?
I think so. And, you know, the thing is that when you're growing these things hydroponically, why don't you put that picture back up? When you grow these things hydroponically, you don't need a lot of land to grow them. They grow very fast.
Not at all. You can get that water right at their roots.
And what's happening in those towers in the middle of the picture is that the seedlings are just going round and round in those things.
They're traveling around in a spiral.
Yep.
And they come out at the bottom all ready to go.
Oh, you were saying they came out at the bottom, and I thought you were going to say it goes round and round and it comes out here.
Well, it does.
It does.
It does.
And
really.
when it comes out at the bottom,
it's ready to go.
And those things are getting big. They can grow even bigger as they go down that long line, and they're going to be big enough to give to the cattle and have the cattle eat them. They don't have dirt in the hydroponic system, so the cattle are going to be eating this without gritty stuff in it, like sand and gravel and stuff.
Which is good for their teeth.
Old cattle, when they die
Yeah,
of natural causes,
Yeah.
they starve to death
because they can't eat
because they
anymore.
can't eat because their teeth are bad. And that's one of the very unfortunate things about animal life. You know, if you go through, I interviewed an organization in New York that had a set of things that they wanted people to do to save the environment, and one of them was to hunt.
Yeah,
And you know,
interesting enough, but you're right.
if you think about it, okay, so these deer, for example, are being killed. But if they aren't killed, how do they die?
I don't know. They
Well,
starve?
there's no the predators that we had out there are not there anymore. We don't
they
want
starve.
wolves on. They starve because they can't. Their teeth aren't working anymore, or they die of pneumonia in a snowbank in November. You know, I mean, it's not easy. It's not a pretty thing when a deer dies of natural causes.
Well, the carbon cost of clearing land for cattle
Yep.
and transporting their feed is well over 5 billion tons of greenhouse gases a year.
Yeah.
Okay, so this company from Utah has developed a more efficient and environmentally friendly way to feed the world.
Right.
This is what they're describing what's going on in that picture. 2-story cylinders slowly rotate squares of wheat or barley grass through a rapid growth cycle that takes the crops from seed to feed in 7 days.
There you go.
Okay, they're constantly moving slowly around
Slowly
that
around.
spiral.
And then they go to the cattle.
The system feeds cows fresh grass year-round, grown without pesticides.
And you can bet that the cattle
minimal
like
water, minimal fertilizer, and no runoff to lakes or rivers.
that. And you know what? They probably don't even use pesticides in this.
I think the article says a minimum pesticide.
Minimum pesticide use.
Green production can happen indoors or even underground on a farm,
Yeah.
cutting the carbon cost of transporting that feed to zero, while greatly minimizing the amount of grazing land needed per
Yeah.
cow.
Yeah. I think I've said
is
many
a
times,
way to go.
if I were in college now, I would be looking at a future in forestry or in agriculture or something like that, because there's going to be huge changes in those fields as we address climate change.
Well, it makes sense that there will be.
Yeah. And there's places already, we know that there's places that work can be done.
Well, we got a nice picture coming
Okay,
up.
we do indeed, and this is our last article, and we've
A
got
picture of solar installation.
two
Do you
and a
really
half
believe
minutes.
that's what's happening?
No, I think that's
I
posed
think
picture.
they posed it.
Yeah. Okay, what do you got for
Record growth continues for renewable energy projects.
the pace of installations of renewable energy projects across the first 6 months of 2021 hit a new high for the sector, according to a report released by the American Clean Power Association. The U.S. renewable energy additions were 17% greater than for the same period in 2020.
So it's growing annually.
It's growing a lot annually.
Well, the U.S. added nearly 10 gigawatts of wind, battery storage, and utility-scale power generation capacity in just the first half of this year,
yeah.
okay? Of which, more than half of that was renewable energy generation, which happened in the second quarter.
Yeah.
So that this is increasing. This is accelerating.
Yeah,
The U.S. now has more than 180,000 megawatts of clean power generation capacity in operation.
that's 180 gigawatts.
It certainly
And
is.
you haven't explained to people in this show yet what a gigawatt is.
It's a gigawatt.
That's right. Okay, we are coming up to the end of the road here.
I think we are.
We want everybody to have an impressively jolly week.
So let's get us both up
Why don't
here
you
so
put
we
us
can
up
wave
there and we
goodbye.
can wave goodbye.
Adios,
Have a
amigos.
lovely week, and we hope to be able to broadcast through, and you can see us again a week from